Step back in time and explore the grandeur of ancient civilizations. Not through their kings and towering monuments, but through the lives of the people who formed the true foundation of society. In this journey, we shift our gaze away from pharaohs and palaces, and instead walk beside the peasants of ancient Egypt. The hardworking men, women, and children whose hands built the economy of an empire. Their lives were simple, challenging, beautiful, and deeply connected to the Nile. From sunrise to sunset, every moment carried meaning, every task held purpose, and every breath was shaped by nature, labor, family, and faith. Imagine standing on the warm banks of the Nile River, where morning mist rises above the water like a curtain unveiling a new day. The air smells of wet soil and fresh reeds. Boats drift quietly along the river, carrying goods and stories from nearby villages. In the distance, the soft murmur of human activity begins to stir. This is where the lives of Egyptian peasants unfold, in fields, in mud brick homes, in bustling markets, and in spiritual rituals passed down for centuries. For peasants, life was not luxurious, but it was meaningful. They worked tirelessly, not for gold or glory, but for grain, survival, and the well-being of their families. Their hands shaped clay, their feet pressed into the fertile earth, their sweat fed cities, armies, and the grand monuments that still stand thousands of years later. Yet despite their importance, their stories often remain hidden behind the grandeur of pyramids and temples. This script aims to uncover those stories, line by line, moment by moment, to bring their world to life. Imagine you are one of them. Imagine waking up on a simple reed mat inside a small mud brick home. The walls are cool to the touch and painted with faded pigments passed down through generations. A clay lamp flickers gently in the corner. Your family stirs beside you, your spouse, your children, maybe even your parents or grandparents. Multi-generational living is common because survival depends on unity. The first sound of the morning is not a rooster, but your own heartbeat adjusting to the rhythm of the day ahead. Work waits for no one. And in ancient Egypt, the cycles of the Nile determine everything. If the river has recently flooded, its waters leave behind rich black soil called kemet. This soil is more valuable than gold because it produces life. You step outside and feel the cool morning breeze brush against your skin. Your neighbors emerge from their homes greeting one another with familiarity built over years of shared labor and shared struggles. Together, you walk to the fields. Your footsteps create soft impressions in the moist earth. The Nile glimmers beside you, its surface catching the rising sun. To you, the river is more than water. It is a god, a lifeline, a promise. Your ancestors worshipped it. You depend on it, and your children will inherit the same respect. Working in the fields is demanding. Your tools are simple: a wooden plow, a stone hoe, and your own strength. But your knowledge is profound. You understand the soil, the seasons, the winds, and the patterns of nature better than anyone in the kingdom. Your crops must grow: wheat, barley, flax. These are not just plants, they are survival. They are currency. They are the heartbeat of your community. The sun climbs higher, and sweat forms on your forehead. Your muscles ache, but you continue. You are responsible not only for feeding your family, but also for paying taxes. A portion of your harvest will go directly to the state, stored in massive granaries that support the government, temples, and labor projects. Life is not easy, but you are not alone. Everyone works. Men, women, even children. Women often manage household work, grinding grain into flour, baking bread, brewing beer, weaving linen, and caring for younger siblings. Children chase one another between the homes, laughing freely until their small tasks call them back. Lunch is simple bread, onions, maybe a bit of fish, if the catch is good. Food is not extravagant, but it is nourishing, and there is joy in eating together, sharing stories, and feeling the bond of community. As the day goes on, you pause occasionally to admire the world around you. The colors of Egypt are breathtaking: the deep blues of the river, the golden sands on the horizon, the green fields that stretch toward the distance. Sometimes you wonder how a world so beautiful can also be so demanding, but you do not question your role. You accept your place with dignity. In the evenings, life slows down. Families gather around small clay lamps. Children play with carved wooden toys. Women weave linen or mend clothing. Men unwind, sharing stories passed down through generations. Stories of gods, kings, and ancient myths explaining how the world came to be. There is laughter. There is warmth. There is a sense of belonging that money cannot buy. Before sleeping, you step outside one last time. You look up at the vast Egyptian sky, filled with stars that seem close enough to touch. You breathe in the cool night air and whisper a small prayer to the gods. A prayer for your crops. A prayer for your family. A prayer for another day. This is your life. Simple, challenging, beautiful, and deeply human. This script will take you through every part of a peasant's world. Their work, their homes, their families, their beliefs, their joys, their fears, and the quiet strength that shaped an empire. Line by line, chapter by chapter, we will explore what it truly meant to live as a peasant in ancient Egypt. The sun rises slowly over the eastern horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Light filters through the small doorway of your mud brick home, warming the cool air inside. Another day has begun in ancient Egypt, and like every day, it begins early. You open your eyes before the first bird has even sung Thesis Normal. Peasants do not wait for the world to awaken. They awaken the world. Your bed is a simple woven mat of reeds. Nothing fancy, but soft enough to rest your tired body after long hours of labor. You sit up and stretch your arms, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders from yesterday's work. The air smells of clay, straw, and the faint smoke left over from last night's small cooking fire. Your family begins to stir quietly. Children rub sleep from their eyes. Your spouse adjusts their linen garment and ties it with practiced hands. Everyone knows their role. Everyone has a place. Before anything else, you step outside. The morning breeze touches your skin gently. Dew sparkles on patches of grass near the riverbank. The Nile looks calm, as if resting before the busyness of the day. This quiet moment is sacred. For a brief second, you feel the world slow down. You offer a silent thanks to the gods, to Ra for the rising sun, to Hapi for the fertile Nile, to the spirits of your ancestors who watch over your home. Faith is not a separate part of life. It is part of every breath. You return inside to begin the morning tasks. Your spouse grinds grain using 2 large stones. The scraping sound is rhythmic, almost musical. It is the background music of peasant life. The flour will be used to bake flatbread for breakfast. Onions, garlic, and maybe a small portion of leftover fish from the night before complete the meal. Simple food, but enough to build strength for the hours ahead. As the bread cooks, the children perform their tiny chores. One sweeps the floor with a broom made of bundled reeds. Another helps carry water in a clay jar from the nearby well. They are young, but they already understand responsibility. You wash your face with cool water and tie a linen cloth around your head to keep sweat from dripping into your eyes later in the fields. Your clothes are basic, a kilt made of coarse linen for men, or a long sheath dress for women, comfortable and practical for the heat. The first bite of warm bread fills your stomach with comfort. Its earthy taste reminds you of the fields, the soil, and the work that makes each meal possible. You eat slowly, knowing this may be the only real break before sundown. After breakfast, the family divides tasks. The older children help with house duties. Your spouse prepares to weave linen or tend to the small vegetable garden behind the house. You gather your tools: a hoe, a wooden plowhead, a rope, and a small knife. Your hands know these tools better than anything else. They are extensions of your body, shaped by years of routine. Stepping outside again, you join your neighbors walking toward the fields. Their silhouettes move like shadows across the rising light. Everyone greets one another with nods, short words, or quiet smiles. Community is your safety net, your strength, your shared identity. As you walk, you keep an eye on the Nile. Its water level tells you everything. A good flood means rich black soil. A poor flood means famine. The river decides your fate, and you have learned to respect that power. By the time you reach the fields, the sun is higher, and the heat begins to cling to your skin. You take a deep breath, plant your feet firmly in the soil, and begin the day's labor. Work is repetitive, but essential. Each movement is a dance you have memorized. Lifting, bending, planting, smoothing. Your muscles stretch and strain, but you find a rhythm. It is the rhythm of survival. Occasionally, you stop to straighten your back and gaze at the landscape. Tall papyrus plants sway gently in the wind. A cluster of palm trees offers slivers of shade. Birds circle overhead, calling out to one another. You are surrounded by nature, yet you belong to it. You are part of its cycles. Heat changes its heartbeat. Hours pass. Your stomach growls. Your skin grows warm, but you continue. Work is not optional. Harvests do not wait around midday. You take a short break. You sit with a few other farmers under a small patch of shade. Someone passes around bread and onions. You share a laugh about something simple, a child's mischief. A neighbor is a clumsy goat, a memory from last year's festival. These little moments matter. They are what make the hardest days bearable. As the afternoon progresses, you return to the fields. You check irrigation channels to ensure the water flows evenly. You remove weeds with your hands, feeling the soil crumble between your fingers. You talk quietly to your ox as it pulls the plow, encouraging it with gentle words. The sun begins to soften in the late afternoon. Shadows stretch across the land. A cool breeze whispers through the fields, bringing a sense of relief. Finally, the time comes to return home. Your body is tired, but your heart is steady. You have done what you needed to do today. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after that. But for now, you walk back toward your village. The sound of distant laughter floats through the air. A child runs to greet you, arms outstretched. Your spouse waves from the doorway. Smoke rises gently from the evening cooking fire. You step inside your home, feeling both exhausted and fulfilled. This is your life, humble, difficult, yet rich with meaning. Night settles over the land. You lie down on your reed mat. The stars shine brightly through the small window opening. Your eyes grow heavy. You whisper one last prayer, and sleep takes you gently into its arms. Your home is the heart of your world, even if it is small and simple. Made from sun-dried mud bricks, it stands firm against the heat of the desert sun. The walls are thick enough to keep the inside cool during the day and warm during the night. Each brick was shaped by hand, mixed with straw, water, and clay. The same materials your ancestors used thousands of years before you. Inside, the house is modest. There are no decorations made of gold or carvings of rare stone. Instead, you see the beauty of everyday life. Woven baskets, clay jars, red mats, wooden stools, and simple tools that help your family survive. Each object has a story. Each object has a purpose. Your home has a small courtyard where much of daily life unfolds. Here, your spouse grinds grain, children play, and neighbors stop by to share news or borrow something. The courtyard feels warm, bright, and full of movement. It is where laughter mixes with responsibility. It is where the day begins and ends. Families in ancient Egypt are close. Your household may include grandparents, siblings, cousins, or even friends who have become like family through years of shared hardship and shared joy. Living together makes survival easier. More hands mean more work gets done. More hearts mean more love is shared. Parents teach their children from an early age. There are no schools for peasants, no formal lessons, no written textbooks. Instead, children learn by watching. They learn by doing. A young boy follows his father to the fields, imitating the way he holds a hoe. A young girl watches her mother weave linen, memorizing the pattern of her hands. Knowledge passes from one generation to another, like water flowing down the Nile. Marriage is simple but meaningful. There are no extravagant ceremonies for ordinary families. Two people agree to share their lives, join their households, and build a future together. Love grows through everyday moments, shared meals, shared work, shared dreams rather than grand gestures. Your spouse is your partner in everything. Together, you raise children, manage the home, and face the hardships of life. You do not think of love as something dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and enduring, like the river that sustains your crops. Children bring laughter into the home. They run barefoot through the courtyard, chasing one another with wooden toys or playing with small clay animals sculpted by their parents. Their laughter echoes through the village like music. Even in the hottest times, their joy reminds you why you work so hard. Your evenings are simple but comforting. As the sun begins to set, families gather around small oil lamps or sit outside under the orange sky. Neighbors drift by, greeting one another and exchanging small bits of news. Who caught a good batch of fish? Whose crops are doing well? Who needs help repairing their roof? Your community is not just a group of people. It is a web of relationships built on trust, kindness, and shared experiences. Sometimes, in the evenings, someone tells a story. It might be a tale of ancient gods, or a story about a clever animal, or a memory from the last festival. Children sit with wide eyes, listening carefully, absorbing every word. Stories teach values, bravery, loyalty, respect, and humor. They shape the hearts of the young. Your home also holds spiritual meaning. In a small corner, you keep modest offerings to the gods. A bowl of water, a piece of bread, or a tiny clay figure representing a protective spirit. You believe these humble gestures invite blessings and keep misfortune away. Faith does not need grandeur. It only needs sincerity. Life is not always easy. Sometimes sickness spreads through the village. Sometimes crops fail. Sometimes families face heartbreak. But during these moments, the strength of community becomes clear. Neighbors help one another. Women bring food to families in need. Men work together to repair damaged canals or rebuild a broken wall. Support is a natural part of life. Despite hardship, there are moments of joy that make everything worthwhile. Festivals are among the happiest times of the year. When the village celebrates, everyone dresses in their cleanest linen, washes with scented oils, and gathers together for music, dancing, and prayer. Children clap their hands. Women sing songs. Passed down through generations. Men share stories and laugh heartily. The entire community feels alive with excitement. Your home plays a part in these celebrations too. Women bake special breads or prepare small feasts if supplies allow. You light oil lamps and decorate your doorway with fresh flowers or greenery. The simple house suddenly feels festive and bright. As night falls and the celebration ends, your home welcomes you back with its familiar warmth. You lie down on your reed mat, hearing the soft breaths of your children sleeping beside you. The clay walls glow gently from the fading light of the lamp. You think about the day, the work, the joy, the laughter, the challenges, and you realize that even though you are a peasant, your life is rich in ways that cannot be measured in gold. Your home is not made of luxury. Your family is not powerful. But your world is full of love, purpose, and connection. That is what gives life meaning. You close your eyes, feeling grateful for the roof above you, the people beside you, and the land that supports you. And once again, you sleep knowing that tomorrow will bring new tasks, new moments, and new stories to add to the life you are building, one humble day at a time. The rhythm of life in ancient Egypt is shaped by work, not the work of nobles or scribes or merchants, but the work of peasants, the people who make the empire function. Your hands, your strength, your sweat. These are the true engines of the economy. Every morning, you rise before the sun because the land does not wait. Your daily tasks depend on the season, and each season brings its own challenges. You know the 3 great cycles of the Nile better than any scholar ever could. The first season is Akit, the season of flooding. During Akit, you cannot plant, you cannot harvest. Your fields are underwater, transformed into shimmering lakes. This is the time when you repair tools, help maintain irrigation canals, or perform labor for the state. It is also a time for rest, though rest for a peasant is always limited. The second season is Purée, the season of planting. This is when the real work begins. As the water recedes, it leaves behind rich black soil, dark, moist, and full of nutrients. This soil is your wealth, your future, your survival. You push seeds into the soft earth with your fingers or scatter them with swift, practiced movements. Your ox pulls the wooden plow as you guide it by hand, carving new lines in the moist ground. The third season is Shimu, the season of harvesting. It is the busiest, most exhausting time of the year. You cut stalks of grain with flint blades, your back bending again and again in the hot sun. You tie bundles of barley and wheat, stacking them with care. Every bundle matters. Every grain counts. The fields are not your only responsibility. Sometimes you are called to work for the state in a system known as corvée labor. You might help build canals, repair roads, or transport goods. Sometimes you may even work on a royal project carrying stone, hauling mud bricks, or preparing food for larger crews. These are not optional duties. They are part of your obligation to the kingdom. Taxes are another constant part of your life. You do not pay taxes with coins. You pay with grain. A scribe, an overseer visit your village after the harvest. They measure your crops, calculate your portion, and fill the state's granaries with what you owe. The process is strict and sometimes harsh, but it keeps the entire country running. You understand that without taxes, soldiers would not defend the borders. Temples would not offer prayers. Workers on royal projects would not be fed. Even though you sometimes wish you could keep more for your family. You know, the system depends on your contribution. Your tools are simple but effective. A wooden hoe, a plow made of wood and rope, a sickle with flint blades, baskets made of reeds. These are the instruments that shape your life. You mend them often because you cannot afford new ones. Every crack in the wood, every dull edge on a blade, is something you fix with your own hands. Some days, you fish in the Nile. Fishing is both work and hope. Using woven nets or simple hooks, you try to bring home enough to feed your family. The river is full of life. Catfish, tilapia, eels. But some days are better than others. You accept whatever the water gives you. Other days, you tend to animals. Goats, sheep, donkeys, and ducks are common in your village. They provide milk, wool, eggs, and labor. You feed them, clean their pens, and lead them to small patches of grass where they can graze. Your animals are valuable. You care for them like extended members of your family. Work is constant, but it is not joyless. You find pride in what you do. You look at the growing fields and feel satisfaction. You see your children eating bread made from your harvest and feel purpose. You hear your neighbors praise your strong ox or healthy crops and feel respected. The village works together, especially during planting and harvesting. One family helps another. If someone falls ill, neighbors step in. If a tool breaks, someone lends theirs. If a field is too big for one family to manage, extra hands arrive without being asked. Your community is your support, your protection, your shared strength. Sometimes, after long hours of work, you sit quietly by the river. You let your feet rest in the cool water. The sun dips low, casting golden reflections on the surface. You breathe deeply, feeling both exhaustion and peace. The river gives you life. Work gives you meaning. Family gives you purpose. Even though the labor is endless, you know the truth. Without peasants, nothing in Egypt would stand. Not the temples, not the monuments, not the palaces, not even the power of the pharaoh. Your hands feed the nation. Your work sustains an empire admired by the world. And though history may forget your name, the land remembers you. The river remembers you. The fields whisper your story every time the wind passes through the wheat. This is the life of a peasant, a life of sweat, duty, resilience, and quiet pride. A life whose rhythm beat at the heart of ancient Egypt. Food is not just nourishment in ancient Egypt. It is a reflection of the land, the river, the seasons, and the daily struggles of your life. As a peasant, You do not eat like nobles or priests. You do not dine on exotic meats or sweet desserts made with honey and imported fruit. Your meals are simple, honest, and tied directly to the work you do every day. Bread is the heart of your diet. Freshly baked, slightly coarse, warm from the clay oven. Bread fills your home with a comforting smell that makes even the hardest day feel a little easier. Your spouse grinds grain every morning using 2 large stones. The sound of grinding is steady, repetitive, and familiar. It echoes through the courtyard like a song that has played in your family for generations. The flour she makes is mixed with water and kneaded by hand. Sometimes, a bit of barley flour is added to stretch the mixture and make it last longer. The dough rises slowly in the warm air before it is placed into the small clay oven, heated with dried reeds and bits of wood. The heat fills your home, and the walls glow softly from the fire's light. When the bread is done, its crust is firm, and the inside is soft and dense. You tear it with your hands. Utensils are not common for peasants, and eat it slowly, savoring the taste of the land itself. Onions and garlic are your daily companions. Their sharp smell fills the house when they are chopped. Their flavor adds life to even the plainest meal. You eat them raw, roasted, or mixed into stews. Some days, you crush garlic with a stone and blend it with salt and herbs to make a simple paste to spread on bread. Beer is not a luxury for you. It is a necessity. Thick, hearty, and sometimes slightly sweet. Beer is safer to drink than river water and provides energy for long days in the fields. You drink it in the morning, at midday, and sometimes at night. Children drink a weaker version. It is filling and comforting, a part of life as essential as bread itself. Your meals are shaped by the seasons. When the Nile has blessed the land with rich soil, vegetables grow well. Lentils, beans, cucumbers, leeks, radishes, and lettuce often appear on your table. You tend to a small garden behind your house, where you grow whatever your family can manage. You water plants carefully, using leftover water from washing or cooking. A small vegetable patch can mean the difference between hunger and health. Fish is one of your main sources of protein. The Nile is full of fish, tilapia, catfish, and even small eels. Some days, you cast a net made of woven linen. Other days, you use a simple hook carved from bone or wood. If the catch is good, your family celebrates. You grill the fish over a small fire or cook it in a clay pot with onions and herbs. The smell fills the village, and children gather around with eager eyes. Meat is rare. You do not eat it often because animals are too valuable to slaughter. Goats and sheep provide milk and wool. Cattle help plow the fields. Chickens and ducks give eggs that can be eaten or traded. But during festivals, weddings, or special village gatherings, you may taste meat, a small piece, shared among many people. When that happens, it feels like a blessing. Some days, you make a simple stew. Everything goes into one pot. Vegetables, grains, herbs, and whatever leftovers you have. The pot simmers slowly over a fire, its aroma drifting through the courtyard. Stew stretches food further and keeps your family full. It is warm, comforting, and perfect after long hours of work. Dates are your treat, sweet, soft, and full of energy. Dates come from tall palm trees near the river. Children love them. Adults save them for special days or for long journeys. You sometimes crush dates into a paste and mix them with flour and nuts for a sweet snack. Breakfast is usually small. Bread, onions, maybe beer. Lunch is slightly heavier, eaten in the fields under a bit of shade, often consisting of bread, vegetables, and sometimes fish if you were lucky enough to catch some. Dinner is the meal that brings the family together. You sit on red mats in the cool evening air. The sky above you glows purple and deep blue as the stars begin to appear. Children chatter happily. Your spouse ladles stew into small pottery bowls. You tear pieces of bread and dip them into the warm mixture. Food connects you to your loved ones. Eating together reminds you that despite all the fatigue, all the taxes, all the endless work, you still have something worth living for. You share stories as you eat. Stories of the fields, the river, the animals, the neighbors. Laughter breaks the monotony of the day. A small moment of peace settles over your home. After dinner, You clean the clay bowls and set them aside for the next day. Food never goes to waste. You store leftover bread in woven baskets lined with linen. You protect it from insects, heat, and moisture. Tomorrow's meals depend on today's careful planning. As night falls, you sometimes treat yourself to a cup of slightly stronger beer. You sip it slowly, feeling the weight of the day ease off your shoulders. Your stomach is full. Your family is safe. Your home smells of cooked grain, herbs, and warm clay. For a peasant, this is comfort. This is happiness. This is life. Your meals may be simple, but they are woven with love, labor, and tradition. Food is not just something you consume. It is something you create, something you share. Something that sustains not just your body, but your spirit. And when you lie down at night, you think about the next day's meals, what you will harvest, what you will trade, what you will cook. You fall asleep knowing that as long as you can bake bread, catch fish, and grow vegetables, your family will endure. In ancient Egypt, food is survival. Food is identity. Food is life. The desert wind carried the scent of grain and dust as dawn approached over the wide fields of the Nile Valley. Farmers were already awake, rubbing sleep from their eyes as they prepared for another day beneath the endless Egyptian sun. Life came early for the peasants, and the rhythm of their days rarely changed, shaped by the seasons, the flooding of the Nile, and the demands of those in power. Yet today felt heavy, for a royal official was expected to visit, and whenever the government arrived, anxiety followed. Families gathered outside their mud brick homes, some tightening ropes around worn sandals, others sharing small bowls of barley porridge before work. Children tried to stay quiet, sensing the tension in the air, while mothers whispered prayers for protection and fairness. Even the animals seemed uneasy, donkeys shifting their weight and goats bleating more than usual. Peasants knew that a royal visit meant inspections, demands, or new instructions that could change their lives overnight. By mid-morning, a cloud of dust rose from the road as the official's small caravan approached. Soldiers walked alongside the chariot, their bronze weapons shimmering, a reminder of authority that could not be questioned. The villagers stood in rows, heads lowered, showing respect while hiding their fear. Even the oldest elders, who had survived many floods and famines, felt their hearts pound. The royal official stepped down, his linen robes bright and clean compared to the simple garments of the peasants. His face was stern, his eyes sharp, scanning the people as if searching for flaws before even hearing a word. Behind him, scribes carried rolls of papyrus and ink palettes, ready to record everything they observed. For peasant scribes were more frightening than soldiers, because a single mark or number could raise taxes or change a family's fortune forever. The official announced that he was sent by the pharaoh's administrators to ensure all farming quotas would be met. He spoke proudly of Egypt's greatness, reminding the villagers that their labor fed the temples, the palaces, and the armies that protected the land. But the peasants heard something else, a warning that failure was not acceptable. They exchanged quiet glances, knowing that the Nile's last flood had been unpredictable and that harvests might not meet expectations. The farmers respectfully explained the challenges they faced. Speaking of fields damaged by water or pests, they hoped for understanding, for compassion, for even a small reduction in their required grain deliveries. But the official's expression did not soften. Instead, he ordered stricter monitoring of the fields. He commanded that extra workers be assigned to ensure that no grain was wasted. Not even a handful dropped during transport. Some peasants clenched their fists in frustration, though they kept their heads bowed to hide their emotions. Others felt fear tightening their chest, imagining the punishments that could come if harvest totals fell short. The scribes made notes rapidly, their brushes gliding across papyrus as they recorded new instructions. Every stroke meant another burden, another responsibility the villagers must bear. When the inspection moved to the granaries, the peasants held their breath. They worried the official might accuse them of hiding grain for their families, something punishable by beatings or forced labor. The guards counted every jar, every sack, making sure nothing was missing. A single error, intentional or not, could lead to harsh consequences, and the peasants knew it. At last, the official seemed satisfied enough to leave, though he warned that he would return soon. His final words echoed across the village like a shadow. The pharaoh expected unwavering loyalty and flawless productivity. As the caravan moved away, the villagers slowly exhaled, their bodies shaken with relief and exhaustion. But the worry remained, lingering like the heat that pressed down from the sky. When the sun began to set, families gathered again, discussing what the visit meant for their future. Some feared they would not survive the season. Others believed the gods would provide if they remained patient and united. The elders reminded everyone that peasants had always endured hardship, and together they would endure again. Their strength, they said, was not in wealth or power, but in resilience and community. That night, the stars shone brightly over the Nile, their reflection dancing on the gentle water. The farmers gazed at them with quiet hope, finding comfort in knowing that even in the darkest times, the heavens remained constant. They whispered prayers to Ra, Isis, and Osiris, asking for protection, good harvests, and lighter burdens. Though they had no certainty of what the next royal inspection would bring, they clung to the belief that tomorrow might offer something better. And as sleep slowly embraced the weary village, the Nile flowed steadily through the land, carrying with it the promise that life, no matter how difficult, would continue. Life in ancient Egypt was not only about work and survival, it was deeply intertwined with the unseen world. Every peasant understood that gods and spirits influenced the river, the crops, the health of the family, and the future itself. Faith was not optional, it was a necessity, as vital as water or grain. Each morning, before stepping into the fields, you pause to offer a prayer. Sometimes it is a whispered word to Ra, the sun god, thanking him for light. Sometimes it is a plea to Hapi, god of the Nile, to bring a flood that will nourish your fields. Sometimes it is a simple gesture, a small bowl of water or a handful of grain left at a shrine near your home. Children learn these rituals early. They follow their parents to small shrines built near homes or along the river. They imitate the gestures, fold their hands, and bow their heads. They learn that the world is filled with forces both seen and unseen. They learn respect, humility, and the importance of acknowledging what they cannot control. Festivals were moments when religion became a public spectacle. Even as peasants, you were expected to participate. The village might gather to honor Osiris, god of the afterlife, or Hathor, goddess of fertility and joy. Music filled the air, flutes, drums, and clapping hands. Men and women danced with vigor. Children jumped and twirled. Everyone brought something to offer: a loaf of bread, a jug of beer, a small figurine carved from clay. Temples, though distant and grand, were not beyond your reach. Pilgrimages might take you to a nearby temple, where you observed rituals performed by priests in elaborate clothing. The rituals were complex and mysterious. You did not fully understand all the chants and symbols, but you knew they worked in favor of life, fertility, and protection. Even daily tasks had religious undertones. Planting seeds was a ritual in itself, an offering to the gods to honor the cycle of life. Harvesting crops involved prayers of gratitude, because what came from the earth was considered a gift, not merely a commodity. Every act in the peasant's life was connected to divine order. Ebonif subtali. Superstitions also played a role. A sudden misfortune, a sick child, a broken tool, a destroyed crop, might be seen as a warning from the gods. You consulted elders or local wise women, seeking remedies or advice to appease spirits. Amulets were worn around the neck or wrist, simple carvings of animals or symbols believed to bring protection. Even a small charm of a scarab beetle or a tiny stone representing the Eye of Horus could make a family feel safer. Death and the afterlife were never distant concepts. Every peasant understood that life was temporary, and that respect for the dead mattered greatly. Burial practices, even for ordinary families, included washing and wrapping the body, placing small offerings nearby, and performing simple prayers. Though you could not afford elaborate tombs like the pharaohs, the belief that ancestors watched over the living brought comfort. Seasonal changes often dictated religious observances. During the flooding season, prayers for Hapi were intense and frequent. During the harvest season, gratitude ceremonies were common. During drought or pestilence, offerings were made to gods of protection and fertility. The rhythm of faith mirrored the rhythm of work and survival. Religion also bound the community together. During festivals or communal rituals, villagers shared food, sang together, and danced. Strangers could become friends. Families supported each other. Even disputes were softened by shared reverence, as the presence of divine authority reminded everyone of moral and social obligations. At night, the Nile reflected the starlit sky, and villagers whispered prayers from their homes. The small shrines, the simple offerings, and the whispered chants formed a protective web over the village. You felt secure knowing that gods, spirits, and ancestors were watching over you, guiding your labor and blessing your family. Religion, faith, and superstition were not separate from life. They were life itself. Every action, every word, every moment of rest carried meaning. Even in the harshest seasons, peasants found comfort in knowing that life was part of a larger order, one they could honor through labor, devotion, and respect. And as you lay down at night, tired from the day, you felt the presence of something greater than yourself. The gods were not distant rulers. They were companions in your daily life, sharing in your joys, your fears, and your hopes. You slept peacefully, believing that tomorrow, with the Nile's blessing and your efforts, life could continue. Ibn flourished. Despite its hardships, the life of a peasant in ancient Egypt was dictated by the natural world. The sun, the Nile, the winds, and the desert all shaped every action, every decision, every day. You could plan your labor, your planting, and your meals, but ultimately, the weather determined your success. The year was divided by the cycles of the Nile Akit. The inundation season was when the river overflowed its banks. Fields were submerged in water, turning the land into shimmering lakes of black fertile mud. The peasants could not plant during Akat, but they repaired tools, maintained homes, and prepared for the coming season. They studied the river carefully, noting the level of the water and its speed, because a flood too high or too low could mean disaster. During Peret, the growing season, the land was fertile and rich. Fields that had been underwater were now soft and ready for planting. You scattered seeds carefully, tended seedlings, and guided the ox to plow new lines into the soil. Every movement mattered. Every seed mattered. The future of your family depended on your attention to detail. Shimu, the harvest season, brought both relief and anxiety. Crops were ready to be cut, bundled, and stored. It was a time of hard work under the sun, but also a time of hope. If the harvest was good, your family would have enough food for months. If it was poor, hardship and hunger were likely to follow. Rain was rare, but when it fell, it was celebrated. Peasants depended on the Nile for water, not rainfall, yet small showers were welcome. They nourished gardens, cooled the air, and brought a sense of renewal. Too much rain, however, could ruin mud brick homes and wash away the soil. Life was a delicate balance between abundance and scarcity. The wind carried both blessings and challenges. A gentle breeze during the heat of the day brought relief to workers in the fields. A strong sandstorm could sweep across villages, covering homes in dust and damaging crops. Peasants built their houses and stored their food with these winds in mind, always preparing for nature's unpredictability. Animals were also part of the natural rhythm. Oxen helped plow the fields. Goats, sheep, and ducks provided food and wool. Cats prowled the homes, keeping snakes and rodents away. Birds nested in the reed huts and sang from the riverbanks, marking the hours of the day. Night was a sacred time. The desert air cooled, stars appeared, and the moon reflected on the Nile's calm surface. Peasants rested, but they also listened. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of reeds, or the croak of a frog was information, signs that animals were healthy. The river was safe, and life continued. The sun was the greatest master of all. Its journey across the sky dictated work hours. Peasants began labor at sunrise and stopped near sunset. During the hottest part of the day, they rested in shade, drank water, and allowed their bodies to recover. Life was measured by the sun, not by clocks or schedules. Seasons also guided festivals and religious observances. After planting, you thanked the gods for fertile soil. After harvest, you gave offerings of grain, bread, and beer. Each festival aligned with nature's cycle, blending work, faith, and community. Even daily tasks became rituals when performed in harmony with the seasons. The landscape itself influenced your life. The Nile was both lifeline and highway. Papyrus grew along its banks, reeds provided building materials, and fish supplied protein. The desert encroached at the edges, a constant reminder of fragility and limitation. Peasants lived at the intersection of abundance and scarcity, learning to respect both. Whether could inspire hope or fear, a cool breeze after days of heat brought relief and a promise of sleep. A sudden sandstorm reminded peasants that survival required vigilance. Even in the harshest conditions, there was beauty. The reflection of the sun on the Nile, the colors of the sky at dawn and dusk, the soft rustle of crops in the wind. Peasants learned to observe nature closely. They could predict flooding patterns, identify signs of drought, and know which crops would thrive in a given season. This knowledge was passed down from parents to children, a living wisdom that ensured survival. Even as rulers and priests claimed power over Egypt, peasants understood that nature was the ultimate authority. The Nile, the sun, the winds, and the earth dictated life more than pharaohs or scribes ever could. Respect for the natural world was woven into every action, every prayer, every decision. And at night, when the stars sparkled above the quiet fields, peasants lay on their reed mats and listened to the world around them. They heard the rhythm of life, the flow of the river, and the whispers of the land itself. It reminded them that life, though difficult, was part of a greater order, enduring, cyclical, and deeply connected to the natural world. In ancient Egypt, the life of a peasant child was vastly different from the children of nobles. There were no schools for peasants, no formal lessons, and no scribes to teach reading or writing. Yet learning occurred everywhere, in the fields, in the home, and through daily survival. Children learned by watching their parents and elders closely. A boy followed his father to the fields, observing how to guide the ox, how to plant seeds, how to water crops efficiently. A girl stayed near her mother, learning to weave linen, grind grain, and prepare meals. Every gesture, every repetition became part of their education. Tasks were not just work, they were lessons. Handling tools taught responsibility and patience. Carrying water taught strength and balance. Helping with animals taught empathy, care, and awareness. Even small chores, like sweeping or tidying the home, built discipline and skill. Play was also a form of learning. Children made toys from clay, reeds, or scraps of wood. They ran through the courtyards, invented games, and practiced skills they would need as adults. Through play, they learned coordination, strategy, and social interaction. They practiced patience, fairness, and compromise. Storytelling was another form of education. Elders shared tales of gods, ancestors, and past village events. Children absorbed lessons of morality, bravery, and cleverness, without even realizing they were learning. Stories taught them how to survive, how to interact with others, and how to honor the gods. Some children had the rare opportunity to learn to read or write. If a family could afford a scribe, or if the child was chosen for work in the temple or administration, they might see the world differently. The majority, however, remained functionally illiterate. Instead, they relied on memory, observation, and experience skills that were just as vital for survival. Peasant children also learned about the natural world. They observed the Nile closely, noting the water levels, the growth of crops, and the migration of birds. They learned which plants could be eaten, which herbs could heal, and which animals were dangerous. This practical knowledge was as important as any written lesson. Social skills were taught through family and community life. Children learned to share, to respect elders, and to help neighbors. They understood early that life depended on cooperation, not only in the home but across the village. Helping someone else's family was helping your own in the long run. Initiation into work happened gradually. At first, children might carry small baskets of grain or tend a few animals. Then they progressed to more physically demanding tasks, such as digging, plowing, or repairing irrigation channels. They learned the rhythm of the day and the endurance required for survival. Children also learned spirituality. They observed the morning prayers, offerings at small shrines, and participation in festivals. They learned which gods protected the river, the land, and the family. Faith became a natural part of life rather than a separate lesson. Even when playing or working, children developed memory and strategy. They remembered the layout of the village, the location of hidden paths, the cycles of planting and harvesting. They memorized stories, songs, and chants that preserved the wisdom of generations. Education was immersive, practical, and deeply tied to daily life. Children were expected to contribute to the household as soon as they could. Their labor was essential to the survival of their family. At the same time, they were nurtured, taught to care for each other, and guided by older siblings and parents. Learning and living were inseparable. As children grew, they gradually took on more responsibility. By adolescence, they could manage fields, animals, and household tasks with skill and confidence. Their education was complete in practical terms, preparing them for a life of labor, community, and family. Yet joy remained in childhood. Even in hard conditions, laughter, curiosity, and wonder were abundant. Children marveled at the stars, the river, and the desert horizon. They played, joked, and imagined worlds beyond the fields. Their spirits, like the river, continued to flow freely even under the weight of duty. By observing, helping, playing, and praying, peasant children learned everything they needed. The lessons of survival, faith, family, and community were etched into their daily routines. Even without books or formal teachers, they grew wise, resilient, and capable, ready to take their place in the enduring cycle of life along the Nile. Clothing was both practical and symbolic in the life of an ancient Egyptian peasant. It was simply lightweight and designed to protect from the heat of the sun, the dust of the fields, and the occasional chill of the desert night. Unlike nobles who wore fine linens and jewelry, peasants relied on function first and appearance second. The most common garment was a simple linen kilt for men. It was wrapped around the waist and tied with a cord. The fabric was breathable, soft, and easy to move in, allowing freedom to work in the fields or tend animals. For women, a long linen dress, often sleeveless, was typical. Children wore smaller versions of adult clothing, often little more than a piece of cloth, tied at the shoulder or waist. Linen was the fabric of choice because it came from flax plants grown along the Nile. The fiber was separated, spun, and woven by hand, often by women in the household. Though coarse compared to the fine linen of the elite, it was durable and comfortable enough for daily labor. Every thread represented effort, skill, and tradition passed down through generations. Footwear was rare. Most peasants went barefoot in the fields, relying on hardened soles and strong feet. Occasionally, simple sandals made of woven reeds or leather were worn, particularly when walking longer distances or attending religious festivals. The sandals were functional, easy to repair, and a small mark of comfort in an otherwise hard life. Belts or sashes were used to hold tools or small pouches. A farmer might tuck a small knife, a handful of seeds, or a pouch of dried herbs into the belt for easy access. Utility was more important than style. Every piece of clothing served a purpose, whether to cover, protect, or carry. Colors were usually natural. White or beige linen dominated, occasionally dyed with plant pigments for special occasions. Bright or expensive colors were reserved for priests, nobles, and royalty. For peasants, the beauty of clothing came from practicality, cleanliness, and the subtle patterns created during weaving. Children's clothing was minimal, reflecting their constant activity. Young boys ran in simple kilts, learning to imitate their fathers. Young girls played in short dresses or simple wraps, their movements unrestricted. The freedom of their attire allowed them to learn, explore, and contribute to household tasks without hindrance. During religious festivals, peasants might clean and decorate their garments. Clothing was washed, mended, and sometimes decorated with small strips of colored thread or beads made from clay. It was a way to honor the gods, show respect, and participate in community celebrations with pride. Jewelry for peasants was rare, but small amulets or simple beads were sometimes worn. A carved scarab, a small ankh, or a tiny figure of a protective deity might hang from a cord around the neck or wrist. These items were believed to bring luck, protection, or divine favor. Even the humblest peasant could feel connected to the sacred through these small symbols. Clothing was also seasonal. During the hot summer, light linen kept the body cool. During cooler nights, shawls or layers of linen provided warmth. Every garment was adapted to the environment, shaped by necessity and experience. Maintenance was continuous. Clothes were washed in the Nile, beaten on stones to remove dirt, and dried in the sun. Repairs were made with hand stitching, patches, or by reweaving small tears. Every mended piece was a testament to care, resourcefulness, and respect for the labor that went into producing it. Despite the simplicity of attire, there was dignity in it. A clean, well-kept garment reflected a family's pride and resilience. It represented survival, skill, and participation in a larger social and spiritual order. Clothing marked identity, too, even among peasants. Subtle differences could indicate age, marital status, or occupation. A stronger farmer might wear a reinforced kilt. A mother might carry a small child in a wrap of cloth. A young apprentice might wear a slightly shorter garment for ease of movement. At the end of a long day, clothing bore the signs of labor, dust, sweat, and stains. But it also carried the pride of accomplishment. It had served its purpose, protected the body, and allowed life to continue despite the hardships of the Nile and the demands of daily work. For a peasant, clothing was never about fashion. It was about survival, practicality, and identity. It was woven, washed, and worn with care, connecting each generation to the land, the family, and the traditions of ancient Egypt. And when you finally lay down at night, the worn linen around your body feels familiar and comforting. It is a shield, a tool, and a symbol of a life sustained by hard work, faith, and enduring wisdom. The homes of peasants in ancient Egypt were modest, built from mud bricks dried in the sun. Walls were thick to protect from the heat of the day and the chill of the desert night. Roofs were flat, often made of reeds or wooden beams covered with mud, providing shade and shelter. Villages were clusters of these small homes, arranged around shared courtyards or near the river. Each family had a small plot of land for their home garden, where they grew vegetables, herbs, and sometimes a few flowers. Neighbors were close, both literally and figuratively, because community support was essential for survival. Inside, the home was simple. A few clay or wooden containers held grain, water, and oil. Red mats provided sleeping areas for adults and children. Cooking was done over small clay ovens or fire pits in an open courtyard. Every space was practical. Every item served multiple purposes. Peasants did not have furniture like nobles. Beds were simple, mats, or raised platforms of reeds. Chairs and tables were rare. Most tasks were performed while sitting or kneeling on the ground. Storage was made from woven baskets, clay jars, and small wooden chests. The home was also a center of family life. Meals were prepared, children were taught, and work tools were maintained. It was a place of rest, storytelling, and quiet reflection after long days in the fields. Even in poverty, homes were centers of warmth and care. Many homes had small shrines or sacred spaces. A figurine of a god, a bowl of water, or a few grains of barley might be left as an offering. These sacred spaces reminded families of divine protection and the connection between their daily lives and the unseen world. Courtyards were shared spaces where much of daily life unfolded. Children played games with clay toys or sticks. Women ground grain, wove linen, or tended small gardens. Men repaired tools, prepared for work in the fields, or rested after labor. Neighbors exchanged news, advice, and support, strengthening bonds within the village. Water was central to village life. Most peasants relied on the Nile or local wells for drinking, cooking, and washing. Daily trips to the river were essential, and villages often formed social ties during these routines. The river was both life and community gathering place. Hygiene was simple but consistent. Clay jars held water for washing, and linen cloths were used for cleaning. Oil was applied to the skin to protect against sun and dryness. Bathing occurred in the river or in small basins at home, often with herbs or natural scents. Storage was crucial. Grain, vegetables, and preserved foods needed protection from pests, humidity, and heat. Clay jars were sealed, baskets kept off the ground, and food rotated to prevent spoilage. Careful management meant survival during times of scarcity. Social gatherings often took place at home or in open courtyards. Families invited neighbors for meals, to sorry news, or to celebrate festivals. Even in small homes, there was laughter, music, and a sense of togetherness. Community was inseparable from the physical space of the village. Homes also reflected status within the peasant community. A larger courtyard, a well-maintained roof, or a flourishing garden indicated experience, skill, and stability. Though simple by elite standards, these homes were carefully tended and a source of pride. Even at night, homes were centers of life. Families gathered around small fires, shared meals, told stories, and whispered prayers. Children fell asleep on mats. Parents rested with a sense of accomplishment, and the village quieted under the starlit sky. The home was more than shelter. It was survival, education, faith, and love intertwined. For a peasant, the house was not just a building. It was a haven from the sun, a place to rest, a classroom for children, a kitchen, a workshop, and a sacred space. Every brick, every mat, every jar told the story of labor, resilience, and family life. And when the first rays of the sun touched the rooftops the next morning, peasants rose again. They left their homes to work, harvest, pray, and live, knowing the safety of their houses would welcome them at day's end. The rhythm of village life, centered around modest homes, was steady, reliable, and enduring, the backbone of Egyptian peasant existence. In ancient Egypt, every task required tools, and every tool was vital for survival. The peasant could not work without them, and each item was carefully maintained to last as long as possible. In two fields, the plow was the most important tool. Simple wooden plows were sometimes tipped with stone to cut the earth more efficiently. Oxen or donkeys pulled the plow, guided by the farmer, breaking soil for planting. The sound of the plow moving through the dirt was a familiar rhythm that marked the passage of the day. Hoes and sickles were used for planting and harvesting. The sickle, curved and sharp, cut wheat, barley, and reeds. Children learned to use smaller versions safely, practicing their grip and coordination. Hoes turned soil, removed weeds, and shaped irrigation channels. Every movement was precise, honed through repetition and years of experience. Buckets and baskets were essential for carrying water, grain, and harvested crops. They were made from reeds, woven tightly to hold liquids or solids. Clay jars were used for storage, keeping food safe from pests and moisture. Even the smallest tools were important. A missing bucket could delay work or spoil a harvest. Knives were used in the household and the fields. A peasant used knives for cutting vegetables, preparing fish, and crafting small items from wood or bone. Blades were sharpened on stones, ensuring efficiency and safety. Every knife was valued because it was a lifeline for daily work. Fishing tools included nets, hooks, and traps. Fishing was both a skill and a necessity, providing protein that bread and vegetables could not supply alone. Children learned to weave simple nets, and adults perfected the placement of traps along the riverbanks. Fish could be grilled, dried, or stored for later meals. Peasants also used ropes and cords. Ropes were essential for tying animals, securing loads, and constructing temporary shelters. Rope making was an art in itself, often done from papyrus fibers twisted tightly to last. The strength of a rope could determine success in daily work, and poor quality ropes were a constant source of frustration. Small tools, like needles made of bone or wood, were used for sewing and repairing clothes. Every tear in linen was mended immediately. Nothing was wasted. Peasants understood that labor had value, and tools were an extension of that effort. Wooden mallets, stone hammers, and chisels were used for construction and maintenance. Mud brick homes required regular upkeep, and simple repairs could prevent the collapse of walls or roofs. Even children learned to hammer gently and accurately, contributing to the household's stability. Weapons were rare, but sometimes necessary. Peasants might have a spear or a simple bow for hunting or protection. Villages occasionally faced threats from wild animals or raiders, and basic defense tools were kept ready. However, most peasants relied on community strength and caution rather than constant armed defense. Every tool told a story of labor, skill, and adaptation. Even a simple basket or knife reflected knowledge passed down from generation to generation. Tools were more than instruments. They were lifelines, symbols of endurance, and the foundation of daily life. The careful maintenance of tools was a continuous responsibility. A plow left outside might warp under the sun. A sickle left unsharpened could fail during harvest. Buckets cracked if left in the sun too long. Every item required attention, and neglect could lead to hardship. Peasants often improvised when tools were lacking. A broken handle could be replaced with wood scavenged from nearby trees. A missing rope could be braided from vines or reeds. Resourcefulness was as important as skill, and creativity ensured survival when resources were scarce. By evening, tools were cleaned, stored, and prepared for the next day. Children helped carry, repair, and organize, learning responsibility and pride in their work. The village's survival depended not only on labor but on the careful use and preservation of these simple instruments. And as night fell, peasants reflected on their day, grateful for the tools that enabled them to feed their families, maintain their homes, and honor the gods. These instruments, humble yet indispensable, shaped the rhythm of life and linked every peasant to the cycles of the land and the flow of the Nile. Food was the center of daily life for a peasant in ancient Egypt. It nourished the body, strengthened laborers, and allowed families to survive the harsh realities of farming life. Bread was the staple of every meal. It was made from emmer wheat or barley, ground into flour using stone mortar and pestles. Women mixed the flour with water and sometimes a bit of salt or honey. Dough was kneaded, shaped into small loaves, and baked on clay ovens or flat stones heated by fire. Every family depended on bread, and no meal was complete without it. Vegetables were plentiful along the Nile. Onions, leeks, garlic, and lentils were common additions to meals. Beans, cucumbers, and radishes provided protein and vitamins, supplementing the simple bread diet. These vegetables were often cooked in water or roasted over fire, sometimes mixed with oil or herbs. Beer was another essential part of the peasant diet. It was made from fermented barley and was thick, nutritious, and slightly alcoholic. Beer provided hydration, energy, and calories, especially during long hours in the fields. It was consumed daily by both adults and children in small amounts. Fish from the Nile supplemented meals. Some families caught fish themselves using nets, hooks, or traps. Others relied on local markets to trade grain or labor for fish. Fish could be grilled over fire, dried for storage, or preserved with salt. Meat was rare for peasants. Hunting was limited, and domesticated animals like goats, sheep, or ducks were primarily reserved for special occasions or religious offerings. Most families ate meat only during festivals or important community events. Protein largely came from legumes, fish, and small amounts of dairy. Dairy products were common in small amounts. Milk from goats or cows was consumed fresh or made into simple cheese. Cheese was preserved for days, providing extra nutrition during busy work weeks. Butter and ghee were rarely used. Oil from seeds or pressed nuts was more common for cooking. Cooking was done over open fires or clay ovens. Wood or reeds provided fuel, and smoke carried the aroma across villages. Meals were simple, hearty, and prepared in a communal way, often with multiple family members contributing. Cooking required skill, patience, and efficiency to make the most of limited ingredients. Herbs and spices were minimal, but carefully used. Salt preserved foods and enhanced flavor. Coriander, cumin, and other local herbs were added when available. Every flavor, however subtle, added richness to an otherwise plain diet. Food was also shared and celebrated. During festivals, families and neighbors gathered, exchanging dishes and providing small offerings to the gods. Before eating, even peasants understood that food was sacred, a gift from the Nile, the gods, and the labor of hands both young and old. Meals were also a time for teaching. Children learned to prepare bread, cook vegetables, and handle fish. They learned measurement, timing, and the importance of hygiene. Cooking was more than sustenance. It was an essential life skill and a form of education. Food scarcity was a constant concern. Poor, floods, droughts, or pests could threaten crops and reduce supplies. Peasants learned to ration, preserve, and improvise to ensure their families survived lean periods. Every grain saved, every loaf baked efficiently, was part of a larger survival strategy. Despite simplicity, meals were a source of comfort. Families gathered in courtyards, shared laughter, told stories, and expressed gratitude. Even a small portion of bread with onions and beer could feel abundant when shared with loved ones. Festivals brought feasts, though limited for peasants. Special breads, meat from sacrifices, and extra beer marked the occasion. These rare celebrations reminded peasants of joy, community, and the connection between labor, faith, and reward. By evening, after a long day of work, food restored strength. Families ate together, children played nearby, and elders offered wisdom while sharing bread and water. Nutrition, community, and ritual all intertwined, creating a pattern that sustained both body and spirit. Food for a peasant was never merely a meal. It was life, tradition, labor, faith, and family wrapped into each bite. It symbolized survival, endurance, and the intimate bond between humans, land, and the Nile. And when the village lay quiet under the starlit sky, the aroma of the day's cooking lingered. It reminded everyone that life, no matter how hard, was nourished by effort, care, and the blessings of the natural world. Life as a peasant in ancient Egypt was physically demanding, and health was a constant concern. Labor in the fields, exposure to the sun, and limited nutrition made illness a frequent challenge. Common ailments included fever, infections, digestive problems, and injuries from tools or animals. Peasants had few resources to treat serious illness, relying largely on home remedies, herbs, and the knowledge of elders or local healers. Healing was a combination of observation, experience, and faith in both natural and divine forces. Herbs played a central role in medicine. Garlic, coriander, and juniper were used to treat infections. Honey served as an antiseptic for wounds and cuts. Roots and leaves from local plants were boiled or crushed to create poultices, teas, or ointments. Bones were set and wounds cleaned using simple tools. Pain was managed with natural remedies, such as oils, herbs, or cold water. Children learned early how to care for minor injuries, assisting elders in daily health practices. Every family member had a role in maintaining wellness. Midwives and older women were essential for childbirth. Pregnancy was risky, and many complications arose during delivery. Midwives guided women through labor, provided herbal remedies, and advised on newborn care. The survival of mother and child depended heavily on their skill and experience. Spiritual healing was intertwined with medicine. Prayers, amulets, and small offerings were common when illness struck. The gods were believed to influence health, and rituals often accompanied practical treatments. Illness could be seen as a test, punishment, or imbalance, requiring both care and devotion. Cleanliness was a preventive measure. Washing hands, bodies, and cooking utensils reduced disease. Water from the Nile was used for bathing and cleaning, though it was also a source of some illnesses. Families prioritized hygiene to the extent possible, knowing that prevention was better than cure. Nutrition played a crucial role in health. Bread, vegetables, and beer provided basic sustenance, but lack of variety often led to deficiencies. Peasants understood that a balanced diet, even simple, was necessary to maintain strength for labor. Children's growth and vitality depended on both the quantity and quality of available food. Injuries were a constant threat. Working with plows, sickles, and heavy loads led to cuts, sprains, and broken bones. Recovery required rest, care, and sometimes the assistance of neighbors or family members. Even minor injuries could disrupt the flow of daily life, emphasizing the importance of vigilance. Mental health was affected by stress, workload, and uncertainty. The fear of famine, illness, or inspections from officials weighed heavily on peasants. Spiritual practices, community support, and family bonds provided comfort and resilience. Sharing stories, songs, and laughter helped ease anxiety and strengthen communal ties. Plagues and epidemics occasionally struck villages. Without advanced medicine, survival depended on isolation, careful observation, and reliance on prayers or protective charms. Knowledge of past outbreaks was passed down through generations, shaping caution and preparedness. Childhood illnesses were common, and many children did not survive infancy. Parents relied on herbal remedies, rituals, and guidance from elders. The high mortality rate made care and attention critical, and each surviving child was celebrated. Despite hardships, peasants developed remarkable resilience. They adapted to illness, improvised treatments, and cared for one another through skill, observation, and faith. Every healing action, whether washing a wound, brewing a tea, or offering a prayer, was an act of survival and devotion. Even at night, families remained vigilant. Parents watched children sleep, ensuring they were safe from harm. Elders monitored those recovering from illness, checking for fever or weakness. Health was a communal responsibility, and every family member played a role. For a peasant, medicine was practical, resourceful, and intertwined with belief. Healing was not a separate profession, but a part of daily life, passed down through generations and reinforced by experience. The balance of labor, diet, hygiene, and faith formed the foundation of survival in a world without modern medicine. And when the stars appeared over the Nile, families whispered prayers for protection, nourishment, and wellness. Even in the harshest conditions, health, care, and devotion offered hope, continuity, and the strength to face the next day. Family was the heart of peasant life in ancient Egypt. Survival depended on strong bonds, shared labor, and mutual care. The household was not only a place to live, but also the center of social organization and emotional support. Marriages were typically arranged within the community. Parents guided children toward unions that would strengthen family ties and ensure stability. Love existed alongside practicality, growing through shared labor, mutual respect, and companionship. Weddings were simple but meaningful, celebrated with small offerings, songs, and communal meals. The nuclear family often included extended members, grandparents, uncles, aunts, and cousins might live in close proximity, assisting with work and child rearing. This network provided security, advice, and shared resources. No family was entirely alone. Survival was a collective effort. Children were valued for both labor and legacy. They helped with daily tasks, carried messages, tended animals, and contributed to the household's economy. At the same time, they were loved and nurtured, taught the customs, faith, and skills necessary to continue the family line. The survival of each generation was a central concern for parents. Siblings learned cooperation, rivalry, and responsibility. Older children guided younger ones, teaching practical skills and cultural traditions. They shared tasks, helped with education, and formed the first peer networks that shaped behavior and morality. Family hierarchy was clear, yet bonds of loyalty and affection were strong. Neighbors and villagers formed an extended social network. Communities relied on collective labor, sharing tools, crops, and knowledge. Celebrations, festivals, and religious observances reinforced social cohesion. Even disputes were often mediated by respected elders or priests, ensuring harmony within the village. Friendships were forged through shared labor and play. Children played together, learning trust and teamwork. Adults helped each other repair homes, irrigate fields, and prepare for festivals. Mutual reliance was essential, as one family's misfortune could affect the entire village. Respect for elders was central to social structure. Older members of the community were consulted for decisions, guidance, and rituals. Wisdom, experience, and survival knowledge were highly valued. The peasant hierarchy was informal but structured, based on age, skill, and reputation rather than wealth or power. Gender roles were defined but complementary. Men primarily worked the fields, handled animals, and performed heavier labor. Women managed the household, prepared food, cared for children, and participated in weaving, pottery, or small trade. Both roles were essential, and cooperation ensured survival and efficiency. Community celebrations strengthened relationships. Harvest festivals, religious rituals, and family events were opportunities for bonding, sharing, and reaffirming identity. Music, dance, and communal meals created joy and relief from daily hardships. Even simple acts, like helping a neighbor carry water, reinforced trust and solidarity. Conflict existed, of course, but it was often minor and resolved through dialogue, compromise, or mediation. Violence was discouraged, as cooperation was necessary for collective survival. Reputation, fairness, and accountability were essential for maintaining social bonds. Marriage, parenting, and friendship intertwined. With labor and faith, the daily routines of farming, cooking, and caring for animals became opportunities to reinforce moral values, respect, and devotion to community. Every interaction, from tending a field together to sharing bread, contributed to the strength of relationships. Even during hardships, family and community provided emotional resilience. Illness, crop failure, or environmental challenges were shared burdens. Support, advice, and practical assistance allowed families to endure difficulties that would have been overwhelming alone. Social structure was simple but effective. Roles were clear, expectations understood, and bonds strong. Peasants relied on family, neighbors, and village networks for survival, education, protection, and guidance. At night, families gathered around small fires. Children listened to elders, couples shared reflections, and the community's stories were passed down orally. These bonds, both familial and social, created a sense of identity, purpose, and continuity across generations. For a peasant, life was laborious, yet rich in connection. Family and community were not just support systems. They were lifelines, sources of joy, and the framework that allowed survival, learning, and spiritual growth. Through these relationships, every peasant contributed to the enduring rhythm of village life along the Nile. Religion was inseparable from daily life for a peasant in ancient Egypt. The gods were everywhere, in the sun, the Nile, the land, and the skies above. Every action, from planting seeds to preparing meals, was performed with the awareness that divine forces influenced success and survival. Each village had its own local deities and sacred spaces. Small shrines might be built near homes or in communal areas. Families left offerings of bread, beer, or vegetables to honor these gods. Even the humblest peasant understood that neglecting the gods could bring misfortune. Ra, the sun god, was central to life. Sunrise and sunset were not only markers of time, but also spiritual events. Peasants might offer prayers at dawn, asking for sunlight to nourish crops and provide warmth. Sunlight itself was seen as a gift, sustaining life and offering protection against darkness and chaos. The Nile was sacred, often associated with Hapi, the god of the river. Floods brought fertility, but imbalance could destroy crops. Peasants honored Hapi with small offerings before planting, during harvest, and during communal festivals. The rhythm of the river was both a physical and spiritual guide. Other gods provided protection and guidance in daily tasks. Base, the household protector, safeguarded families, children, and childbirth. Sekhmet offered strength and courage, while Thoth was honored for wisdom and knowledge. Amulets, small figurines, and simple charms allowed peasants to feel close to these divine powers. Rituals were simple but meaningful. Pouring water, burning incense, or leaving food for the gods became part of ordinary routines. Even a child carrying a small offering learned to respect the unseen forces that shaped their world. Spirituality was not separate from labor. It was woven into every action. Festivals reinforced faith and community. Harvest festivals, river celebrations, and seasonal observances brought villagers together. Songs, dances, and offerings expressed gratitude and reinforced bonds between humans and gods. These communal rituals reminded peasants that survival depended on both effort and divine favor. Priests and temples were present, but distant for many peasants. Only occasionally would a family travel to a larger town to consult a temple or priest. Most spiritual practice occurred at home or within the village. Accessible and practical, faith was integrated into work, family life, and daily survival. Dreams were also seen as messages from the divine. Peasants believed that visions during sleep could provide guidance, warnings, or blessings. Children and adults alike shared dreams with elders, seeking interpretation and advice. Spiritual understanding was a communal knowledge, passed down and practiced daily. Superstitions coexisted with faith. Unlucky signs, strange animal behavior, or unusual weather might be interpreted as warnings. Peasants responded with prayers, offerings, or minor rituals to restore balance. These practices were practical as well as symbolic, fostering vigilance and awareness of the natural world. Life, death, and the afterlife were deeply connected to religion. Even peasants believed in the importance of proper burials, prayers, and offerings to ensure the soul's journey beyond death. Graves were modest, but the rituals performed were considered essential for continued spiritual protection. Children learned spiritual practices from birth. Parents taught simple prayers, the meaning of amulets, and the importance of respect for nature and the gods. Faith was experiential, learned through observation, practice, and storytelling. Even daily chores were accompanied by devotion. Planting seeds was done with a prayer for growth. Harvesting crops was accompanied by gratitude for Hopi's bounty. Cooking meals included thanks for sustenance and protection for the family. Spirituality offered reassurance in the face of hardship. Illness, famine, and unpredictable floods could threaten survival. Faith, rituals, and community support helped peasants endure these challenges with hope and resilience. For a peasant, religion was not abstract or ceremonial alone. It was woven into labor, education, play, and family life. The gods were present in the fields, in the river, in the home, and in every breath, offering guidance, protection, and meaning to the daily struggle for survival. At night, under the stars, peasants whispered prayers, left small offerings, and reflected on the cycle of life, labor, and divine care. Even the simplest home became a sacred space, connecting humanity to the eternal rhythm of God's nature and the Nile. Life as a peasant in ancient Egypt was simple in appearance but complex in experience. Every day was a blend of labor, learning, faith, and family. Each task, whether planting seeds, tending animals, or baking bread, carried both practical and spiritual significance. Peasants worked tirelessly, from sunrise to sunset. Their bodies bore the marks of hard labor, yet their resilience and skill allowed them to sustain families and communities. Strength, endurance, and ingenuity were their greatest tools, as essential as the plows, sickles, and baskets they carried. Family and community were the foundations of survival. Parents guided children, teaching them skills, morals, and faith. Neighbors shared resources, labor, and wisdom, ensuring that even the smallest village could endure challenges. Together, they built homes, harvested fields, and celebrated the cycles of life and nature. Children grew up learning by observation, imitation, and participation. Play was intertwined with lessons in work, faith, and social responsibility. By adulthood, they were prepared to contribute fully to family and village life, carrying forward traditions that had survived for generations. Faith permeated every aspect of existence. The sun, the Nile, local gods, and household spirits guided labor, offered protection, and shaped moral understanding. Rituals, prayers, and offerings were not mere superstition. They were practical tools for maintaining balance in a challenging world. Even in scarcity, joy persisted. Laughter echoed in courtyards, songs accompanied work, and festivals brought celebration and gratitude. Peasants found richness, not in wealth, but in shared labor, family bonds, and a deep connection to the land and the river that sustained them. Every tool, every garment, every meal was infused with purpose. Bread fed the body, beer provided energy, clothing offered protection, and tools transformed labor into survival. Knowledge, passed from generation to generation, ensured continuity resilience, and adaptability. Though peasants were not wealthy, they possessed wisdom. They understood the land, the river, the skies, and the rhythms of life. They navigated challenges with skill, faith, and cooperation. Every act, no matter how small, contributed to a legacy of endurance, culture, and community. Death and the afterlife were acknowledged with reverence. Even the humblest burial reflected a belief in continuity, a hope that life and labor extended beyond the present world. This faith gave meaning to daily toil and ensured that each generation honored the previous one. Life as a peasant was demanding, yet deeply fulfilling. It was a life of connection between humans, between generations, and between humanity and the divine. Every day told a story of survival, resilience, faith, and the enduring human spirit. The Nile flowed, crops grew, children learned, and families persevered. Through work, devotion, and community, peasants shaped a civilization that would endure for millennia. Though often overlooked by history, their lives were the backbone of ancient Egypt, sustaining culture, faith, and society. And as the sun set over the river, the smoke of cooking fires rose into the sky. Children's laughter faded into the evening, and families rested in their simple homes. The peasant's life continued steady, enduring, and profoundly human. In the simplicity of their existence, the peasants of ancient Egypt created a life of meaning, resilience, and connection that still echoes across time. Their story reminds us that survival, community, and faith are universal, timeless, and essential to the human experience.